I know what I'll say next may seem like a huge bias. So I want to address this first because it's important for the discussion. I love Sonic movies. Of course I do. I'm a huge Sonic fan. I've made a ton of Sonic related videos, not including this unofficial Sonic month, which should say a lot on its own. One of them explicitly celebrating the release of the third movie. I try to play every game I can. I made a point to go to Sonic Symphony, and I would go again. I have some merch, got the encyclopedia. Of course I like the Sonic movies, right? No. Just because I'm a huge fan of the franchise doesn't guarantee me liking these movies. In fact, let's go back in time when Paramount dropped the first movie trailer. This trailer is infamous for how bad it was. Ugly Sonic was the obvious talking point, but even without the hideous design, the movie looked like a generic kids film that happened to feature Sonic. Jeff Fowler and the rest of the crew worked tirelessly to redesign the Blue Hedgehog, which earned a ton of goodwill from the community. However, I still had my reservations since the visuals might have been fixed, but you can't fix things like the writing or acting in post. Well, I mean, I guess you could technically ADR something. Not the point. Video game movies have been historically bad, and with the few exceptions we did get range from mid to pretty okay. I will fully admit I wanted to like this movie, but I was fully prepared to be disappointed. It was certainly better than it had any right to be, and compared to other video game movies, that alone was a lot. Cut to 2025. As of the time of writing, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 has the highest audience and critic score for a movie based on a video game on Rotten Tomatoes, and it's the third highest grossing video game movie of all time, beating freaking Pokemon, and behind the Super Mario Bros. Movie and Minecraft? Okay, I admit, that one kinda stings. The success of these movies, despite their rocky start, is undeniable. Here's the thing, I fully believe this success was wholly accidental. What do I mean by this? Let's take a look at the highest grossing video game movie of all time, the Super Mario Bros. Movie. Surprising absolutely no one, I think the Sonic movies are better than the Super Mario movie, even the first one. I'm clearly not the only one who thought this. As of the time of writing, the first Sonic movie has a higher critic score than the Mario movie, 64 versus 59%. And the Mario movie's audience score is only 2% higher. To clarify, I think both movies are good for what they are. The key difference, for me, is actually something levied against the Sonic movie when the Mario movie came out. Not loyal enough to the games. The Mario movie was chock full of elements from the games. Setting, references, sound, and musical cues. One problem with that. If it's all from the game, why watch the movie at all? I enjoyed the Super Mario movie a lot as a fan. Had I not played any Mario games, however, I genuinely doubt it would have connected with me as much as it did. And before you bring up that I was not the target demographic, yes, I understand that movie is for children and they'll definitely enjoy the colorful ride regardless. But I just don't buy that that is a justification for poorly made movies. Children deserve quality entertainment. The Super Mario movie does a great job at the Super Mario part, but is a little weak on the movie part. Let me ask you a question. If you had to sum up what the Mario movie was about in 1 or 2 words, what would you say? My best guess would be something akin to living up to your potential, but it doesn't really apply to most of the story. It is certainly a part of Mario's arc, as he starts being belittled by his family and peers, only to end up defeating King Koopa. And there's that one scene with Donkey Kong where he reveals that he has a similar family situation. But that subplot with Donkey Kong doesn't go anywhere. And this theme doesn't apply to anyone else, not Luigi or Peach. Contrast with the same question. If you had to say in a few words what the Sonic movie is about, what would you say? Easy. Community. And this is a theme that carries over the entire trilogy. Movie 1 is about finding where you belong. Movie 2 is about being mindful of how your actions affect those around you and taking responsibility. And movie 3 is about how those emotional connections we make and or lose shape us. The Sonic movies hold up better because once I strip away the blue hedgehog frosting, there is still a movie with characters, arcs, and themes, so even non-fans can enjoy them. This is all to say that the biggest criticism regarding the first movie being so divorced from the game's world and lore, which is a very valid criticism and could have easily backfired and made the movie fail as we've seen with other video game movies, was what ended up making the Sonic movies better movies. I know what I'm saying sounds insane, but if you still have doubts that the Sonic movies took the right approach when it comes to adaptation, just look at what's honestly one of the biggest changes in Sonic Movie 3. Gerald Robotnik and the whole being dead thing. Gerald Robotnik is supposed to be dead. It's a big part of the original story and what makes him such a terrifying and great villain. It speaks to his genius that he set this plan to destroy the world into motion 50 years ago, a plan that was executed flawlessly after his death. And this is a threat that the heroes cannot confront. You know, fandom, a change this massive would have set the community in flames. And yet, everyone just kind of rolled with it. While some might have been confused, it was always followed with curiosity, not hostility. And this was a direct result of the fact that the movies have, by this point, established themselves as their own continuity. Adaptations require change. Not all storytelling mediums are the same, and there are elements that work in some that don't work in others. The reason video game movie adaptations fail is because video games have an interactive element where the audience directly moves the story along. Because of this, the story can be told through background elements or be as simple as save the princess. Remove the interactive element and we have a plot that feels empty or flat, and filmmakers haven't yet figured out how to deal with it. On the one hand, we have movies that are so far removed from the games you wonder what's the point. And on the other hand, you have movies that follow the game to a T and end up wondering, what's the point? Detective Pikachu worked because it was based on a game that had a plot that lent itself into a film plot. Not necessarily a well-known game, not as well known as the mainline series at least, but you can plausibly see those games happening elsewhere in this world. Mario doesn't have that. To their credit, they got creative and did change some things around to better fit the format of a movie. This is what I mean by the success of this film franchise was wholly accidental. The first Sonic the Hedgehog movie was an okay family picture featuring a character kids might recognize. I think everyone knew this was supposed to be a one and done deal. The low bar of video game movie quality, plus I'm sure the goodwill earned by redesigning Sonic, allowed the movie to be a huge success, which led to sequels. Now that they had the leeway, they started incorporating more of the games into the movies, making the movies an even bigger success. The first movie was heavily criticized for not being Sonic enough, but that initial distance allowed the crew to start introducing Sonic elements into this world in ways that make sense for them to exist in this world, while easing audiences into these fantastical elements. Because the first movie established this was a different world from the games, this also allowed fans to more easily swallow changes made to the story and lore from those games. I mentioned the whole Gerald thing, but another example is that I was never fully on board with Jim Carrey as Eggman. When I think of Eggman, Jim Carrey is simply not who I see. If I could travel back in time and had the ability to cast someone else, would I? Absolutely not! A more game-accurate Eggman doesn't fit this world, just like Jim Carrey's Eggman doesn't jive with the game world, and that's why they work. These movies are great adaptations because they did what adaptations are supposed to do: adapt. Take a story and characters from one medium and make it work in another. But saying they did this intentionally would make me a delusional liar. Sonic 2 and 3 worked because of the legwork done in Sonic Movie 1, and that only happened by accident. This is not to say that the crew is constantly failing upwards. Obviously, the team behind the movies are clever and talented enough to take advantage of this happy little accident, which is not a given. A lot of circumstantial things aligned for the first movie to be a success. Jeff Fowler and the rest of his team saw the opportunity, took this little accident, and turned it into some of the best video game movies of all time. Thank you very much for watching. What are your thoughts on the Sonic movies? Also, what is your favorite video game movie? I know I've been talking about Sonic this entire time, but let me know your favorite and why it's your favorite in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this gibberish and hope to see you in the next one. Later!